ayuda, carnal, dice mi gente. La raza está abajo y tú estás indiferente. Prefieres cerrar los ojos, no vi nada. Estabas ocupado por andar en la tomada. Te gusta tirar el cruising todo el día, buscando a las mujeres como si el mundo acabaría. Pero no sabías que tú podías continuar tu educación para superarte en la vida. Hermano joven, levanta tu frente y siente el orgullo de ser un descendiente de los aztecas, los incas y los mayas. Ayúdame a pelear y vencer.
Antonio Díaz con su programa Mestizo Experience. Aquí estamos otra vez, estamos en el mes de septiembre y como saben, hablamos de temas internacionales, nacionales, estatales, locales, temas que impactan o afectan no en toda la comunidad, pero enfocamos en la gente indígena. Y yo, como siempre les digo, la mayoría de la gente que habla español, que es de esta área, del sureste o noroeste de México o en esta área, son indígenas, nomás que son colonizados por los españoles, luego los que hablan inglés. Again, those of you that watch this program know it's a bilingual program, and we talk about international, national, state, and local issues that affect the whole community as a whole. But we focus on indigenous peoples. And as I was saying, most Spanish-speaking people here in the Southwest or the Northwest of Mexico, or even into Central and South America, are indigenous people, except they're colonized, right? And I'm always getting messages from different people, and just got one about the Catholic Church, right? Which, for most, is like a sensitive area because, again, for generations, for 500 years, the church has been that elephant in the room, right? I mean, they're the ones that converted us into another religion, and mainly why we do speak Spanish, because it was the Spanish crown in conjunction with the Catholic Church that came down here first and came down in our area, converting all indigenous peoples, enslaving and killing and doing everything they did, right? Which is the terrorism of colonizing an area and the people, which was us, our ancestors. Anyway, in this message, it's about the church and how those that believe in Jesus or believe in that dogma of the Catholic Church came believing that and shoving it down the throat of our ancestors. That's the comment, right? And that's, of course, I agree with it. I don't know why some people may think just because my name's Antonio that I somehow support the Catholic Church. I don't. I do support the right of every human being being able to practice whatever spirituality they want to. I don't call it religion, because to me, something religious can be today's wearing of a mask, because we do it religiously, right? As soon as you get up or you get out or you get into public, you put it on. So now we could be the religion of the mask, right? I believe in the Orient, especially China, because of their population, or Japan even, they've been wearing it for over 20 some odd years. So I guess if we could start a new religion and say we're now the religious peoples of face wearers. I don't know, right? But all the institution of the Catholic Church, which of course is very benign today, and it has people working for it that do a lot of good in the community, but it keeps our people colonized through that way, right? Through doing good. Our people will join it, become priests, become nuns, become whatever, social workers within that organization, and they'll defend it to the death, because that's their avenue, or they see that's the way that they do good for the world, and kind of want to dismiss the first 100 or 200 or 300 years or 400 years of actual savagery and murder that they committed against indigenous people, that continue to commit, really, in certain isolated areas where indigenous peoples don't want these missionaries going in, and they still force their way in there and end up getting people sick, even though today we have this virus that I guess is common to everybody. But in some areas where indigenous people are isolated, and whatever it is that the microbes they share is only within the community, and then you get foreigners or strangers that are coming in with all this other different, vibes, viruses in their lungs and whatever, and breathing it out and causing havoc, which is what happened here 500 years ago, right? I mean, les estoy explicando del virus, ¿no? Y no nomás eso, pero de las religiones como la Iglesia Católica y todo, que yo no le llamo a creencias espirituales una religión, porque como digo, la religión puede ser algo que uno hace diario, ¿verdad? Diario. Puedes poner los zapatos diario en una manera religiosa. Ahora, hoy en día usamos la máscara religiosamente, diario. Solo que podemos hacer una religión ahora de los que usan o creen en usando máscaras, ¿verdad? Porque el espiritualismo y religión son dos cosas. Un amigo siempre me decía eso. Me decía, lo que pasa es que la gente cree que la religión o la palabra religión tiene que ver algo con espiritualidad, con el espíritu, y no es cierto. Uno cuando practica ser espiritual, no es lo mismo como ser religioso, ¿verdad? En que se entrecambia porque uno hace lo mismo en ceremonias vez tras vez tras vez, y por eso es religioso. Como los sacerdotes de la Iglesia Católica prenden un incienso cada vez, o se toman el vino en cierta parte de la ceremonia. Todo eso es lo que es la religión, ¿verdad? Le dicen a uno que cante o que lea ciertos rezos, o que se hinque, o que se pare, o que baile, o que haga lo que va a hacer en ciertas maneras, y eso es lo que es religioso. Es lo mismo en una ceremonia indígena. Tenemos instrumentos, hacemos diferentes ceremonias, pero todo lo hacemos lo mismo. Lo que es religioso, pero no es espiritual. Lo espiritual es lo que uno cree. Y si nosotros creemos en el agua, o en el sol, o en el viento, o en nuestra madre tierra, y los cristianos creen en algún judío que murió en la cruz por cualquier razón, y piensan que ese es el Hijo de Dios, y es la manera que ellos también se van a ir para allá para arriba con ese Dios, pues eso es el espiritualismo, ¿no? Hay esa idea. No lo que practicamos. Lo que practicamos es lo religioso, es algo que hacemos vez tal vez. Por eso digo, uno puede decir, pues me pongo los calcetines en esta manera, a esta hora, siempre. Esa es la religión. Salgo de la casa, me pongo esta máscara, día tras día, en cierta manera, es religión. Es que me dicen siempre que el colonismo y la Iglesia Católica lo que hace, y cómo ha cambiado y cómo son muy buenos. Ahora le digo, no, pero es nuestra gente. Ahora, ¿ve? Ya no son, o si vienen de Europa todavía y no conocen a nuestra gente, pero vienen a imponer todavía las creencias de esa religión, de esa institución, ¿no? Porque para mí la Iglesia Católica es una institución billonaria o trillonaria, ¿no? Bien de mucho dinero, porque todo lo que se robó de aquí, del oro y de la plata y de todas las diferentes piedras que valen, pues diamantes y todo lo que que se llevaron de aquí, todavía lo tienen, y se han comprado tierras, han cada vez que son misioneros en ciertas áreas, compran ahí, ¿no? Y la pertenencia a la iglesia. Solo que son dueños de tierras en todo el mundo, son muy, muy, muy ricos y todavía, no sé si todavía lo hacen, pero es parte de la religión, ¿no? Que uno tiene que darle dinero a la iglesia durante la ceremonia, ¿verdad? Lo que tenga, o 10%, quién sabe qué es. Se siguen siendo más y más ricos y nuestra gente son los que más contribuyen a esto y por eso seguimos colonizados. Fuera mejor dar estos donativos a organizaciones indígenas que asisten a otra gente indígena, no a la iglesia, para que ya podamos entonces apartarnos de ser colonizados, ya empezar a ser una gente independiente, libre de estas creencias que trajeron para acá sobre 500 años estos españoles, estos sacerdotes italianos y todo lo que vinieron para acá. Es lo que yo digo. Es mejor si hay organizaciones indígenas que ustedes puedan contribuir para que se hagan más fuerte y puedan entrar en la comunidad y empezar a enseñar lengua indígena, empezar a enseñar cultura indígena, a regresar a nuestras raíces. Es lo que digo yo. Y es lo que hago yo actualmente. Si pueden ver, soy todavía el fundador y el que está encabezado de el Concilio Indígena de Texas, que ha existido aquí en Texas ya por más de 20 años. Tenemos ciertas cosas que hemos hecho. Este año otra vez hacemos la marcha para el Día de Dignidad de Gente Indígena aquí en San Antonio. Es en el 12 de octubre, en el actual día. Hemos agarrado ya, obtenido cierto apoyo del gobierno local que por años y años no teníamos, ¿no? Y la lucha es la lucha. Porque también pues, estamos en contra de estas instituciones que son del colonismo. Y estas instituciones pues es como, pues es el poder, ¿no? Es el poder que nos quitó todo. Solo que tratar de hacer ganancias de entre estas instituciones gobernantes es muy difícil para gente indígena o para temas indígenas. Porque lo que nosotros queremos es ser tratados como iguales, con los mismos derechos. Y para eso entonces se nos va a tener que entregar derechos humanos que se nos niegan hasta este día, como el derecho de migrar. La migración, porque los españoles cuando llegaron aquí, si ustedes leen la historia, ellos imponieron que como seres humanos tenían el derecho ellos de migrar a cruzar el mar y tenían derechos de entrar a cualquier tierra para pedir auxilio, ¿no? Agua, comida, manera de sobrevivir. Bueno, eso se lo niega a la gente indígena hoy en día por estos mismos invasores, ¿verdad? Los españoles o los ingleses, los que vengan y los que han puesto sus fronteras, sus muros, sus cercas, sus maneras de dividirnos, son los que tienen el poder. Pero llegaron aquí pidiendo ellos el asilo, pidiendo ayuda, que ellos decían que era un derecho humano y que les daba derecho a ellos a hacer guerra si uno se lo daba. Pues nosotros tenemos el derecho humano de emigrar y es lo que yo le quiero meter en la cabeza a mucha gente que habla español, de piel café, que tienen abuelos, tatarabuelos y todo, que tienen sangre indígena y no sé cómo se la removieron ellos para decir que ahora nomás el nacionalismo es todo lo que le importa, ya no le importa de la sangre, no le importa de sus antepasados, no le importa de la lucha para los que vienen para acá con niños muriéndose en la frontera, encarcelados en cercas, por buscar lo mismo lo que buscaban estos españoles, estos ingleses, estos alemanes, estos que venían para acá cientos de años para atrás, que era el derecho humano de emigrar para buscar manera de sobrevivir. ¿Verdad? I've gone into a litany of different subject matter, but mainly focusing on colonialism and the church, and how is one of the richest and most powerful institutions in the world, and how it got that way was by coming across the ocean and taking everything they wanted from us, which was mainly gold and whatever valuable stones such as diamonds and whatever they can find, and take it back to their church, right? And so they've bought lands all around the world. Everywhere you see a missionary, they buy that land and they build a church on it, right? And even though they're saying, "Oh, well, we're feeding the hungry, we're doing this, we're clothing, yeah, but you went in someone else's land and took it, and now you're the authority there. And since it's most of these churches, I don't care which one it is, they all ask for money. It's a part of their ritual. It's a part of the ceremony that you got to give them 10%. So with that money and whatever money else they get, homes and all this, they're able to do all this missionary work, such as clothing and food and everything, to get people to become converted into their religion, and then also donate and give and serve. And so I'm just saying that indigenous people, instead of continuing with your colonized way of giving your money and whatever you can to the church, why don't you give it to an indigenous organization, or straight out to indigenous people, so that they can survive, amongst the invaders and amongst colonialism. All these borders that are set up today, the empowerment that all these foreigners have given themselves, not over all the natural resources. Like I said, gold was the main thing that drove Christopher Columbus, Cortez, all these that used to chop up babies and do whatever, and Coronado and everybody that moved northward from the landing in Salvador up northward into this continent, the mainland, was in the search, still continued, of gold, because Coronado supposedly was looking for the 7 cities of gold or whatever. So that drive, right? But they wound up now knowing that oil. Where did that come from? There used to be cartoons about how much oil there was in Texas, right? About how everybody was a millionaire in Texas because of oil. Well, in those cartoons, they didn't show black millionaires, Native American millionaires. It was always some Anglo-looking cowboy boot wearing cartoon type jumping around that he was a millionaire. So you see, even in those stereotyping, we that are from here never were portrayed as being rich, as having anything. And so I'm saying, why don't we give to ourselves? Why don't we donate to our own causes, donate to indigenous organizations, donate to indigenous hunger, donate yourself directly to strengthen ourselves and break away from colonialism, break away from the institution of the church. I mean, the church can give all it wants because they're, like I said, probably trillionaires. The institution itself, not every single, the Pope, we're over here complaining, well, the Pope is canonizing or giving sainthood to this priest that set up the mission system in California and what's his name, Sierra, and who wiped out and did and raped and all that. Same thing happened in Texas, in New Mexico, and Colorado, because it was all just one big chunk, the southwest or the northwest of Mexico. The mission system, we know, to us, is like the concentration system, where it just converted people, indigenous people, and forced us to work. And they keep saying that somehow, again, see, all these natural resources, all the foods that were grown here didn't just grow wild. Our ancestors tended them. They knew where they were going to grow and what season was their growing season, and they tended so that they could get a good crop. But somehow, no, we're just hunter-gatherers. You went around eating roots and bugs. Why? When all the fruit was hanging up on top, we just going to let it rot? No. We helped the apple trees, the peach orchards, all this, the potatoes, all of it. But we own none of it today, unless somehow we get into the same capitalistic ventures that set all these other foreigners up, right? But all this, our ancestors actually manipulated to grow, such as corn, beans, squash, All this is from here. Chile, Chile that's around the world, being also, again manipulated to be either hotter or sweeter or whatever, it's from here. But yet, our people were supposed to be running around digging the earth for grubs, worms, and stuff like that. Not eat the food that was growing right in front of them. The Spaniards had to come and show them, oh, this is what you eat. How did they know that? It didn't grow in Europe. It grew here. We're the ones that taught them. But we lost it all. I'm saying there's a way to regain it by starting to support our own selves, support our own interests back again. And one, if we're equal human beings today, that the Catholic Church or whatever church says we are human now, we're no longer savages and near animals, or we're now human beings with equal rights, why doesn't this somehow get looked at how things started here and say, well, we did all these atrocities, but you people are still the original people from here. And one of the main things that should be allowed by all human beings is a right of migration. And when it's being denied to the original people, to the descendants of the original people, because you got children in cages, what's supposed to be the U.S.-Mexican border, which to us is just a river. It's a river set up as an international border. Panama Canal didn't exist, you know that. It was started by the French and finished by the United States money interest to open up the canal so they wouldn't have to go all the way around. But it divided land and people. All these things that have been done here without the indigenous people benefiting or gaining anything, instead losing and losing. One thing we should at least have is the right to migrate on our own continent. I don't say immigrate because we're not immigrating. We're just migrating as we used to do, or our ancestors used to do. That's why today there's so much poetry and songs and documentaries done about the hummingbird, about the butterflies, excuse me, and their migration patterns that start from Canada and go into Mexico and into Central America. Now, these migration patterns aren't new. They've changed a little because of, again, modernization, such as travel, planes, and all that, that impacts the birds, that impacts anything that flies, right? And then the climate, it keeps changing. And so these beings or animals or whatever you call it, insects such as butterflies or such as hummingbirds, such as birds, that are, and other animals, because they wiped out the buffalo. Buffalo used to come all the way into Mexico, from Canada all the way down. These were migration patterns and paths that our ancestors took because they could look up into the sky and think, oh, why are the geese flying south or north? Because there's not going to be any rain. Or the hurricanes are coming. There's going to be too much rain. There's going to be earthquakes. There's going to be fires. Unlike today, where because of that you have to buy your home and that little plot of land on it, our ancestors used to move around and then come back, not exactly the same area, but very close to it, and move again with the climate, with whatever catastrophe was happening constantly. So to deny us a migration right that was a part of our way of living is against our human rights. And again, today you're stuck wherever you buy a little plot of land, and you gotta, if it floods, you gotta buy your insurance, you gotta do all these things that come along with the capitalistic system. Whereas before it was, well, we're moving and we'll come back when it's dry. At least for indigenous people. Other, I think, European folk that came already from a system that had them in certain areas because their kings or queens wanted to have that power, so they made sure that those people stayed where they were supposed to be. And that's the system that was brought over here, not a system that we used to live under. And of course, we can't say we're going to revert back and incorporate all the same things. But one thing we can incorporate, one human right we can incorporate and should be, is the right of indigenous people to migrate freely on their own ancestral land, where we can live anywhere we want to, work anywhere we want to, get educated anywhere we want to. That would be a start towards some sort of justice on this stolen land by all these Europeans. And if they really want to say, well, we want to become a more just people in this time, during this era, well, then try putting legislation together, not just here. I'm talking about starting from Canada, all the invaders, all the way into the deepest part of Argentina. All should allow migration of indigenous people without losing their holdings where they're at, to be able to migrate back and forth. I think there's certain areas around the world where you can't buy land that would adversely impact that indigenous community. So I don't see why that isn't enforced here. Instead of just saying, well, there's a reservation and all these rules that we set up, the U.S. or whatever government sets up through the Bureau of Indian Affairs or whatever it is, you have to be here and you have to have a certain amount of people here and you have to do this and that, all this prerequisites in order for indigenous people to have a certain area of land and be able to say it's theirs and not have it shrunk and all the mineral rights, never be able to own them, never be able to own water rights, never be able to do anything without the government that took everything from them being able to say, okay, you can dig a well there, or okay, we're not going to run pipes down underneath through your lake, or we're going to see all these things that are still going on today. Como les digo, pues este programa está dirigido para enfocarnos en los derechos de las gentes indígenas y la identidad de gente indígena. Solo que siga sintonizando este programa, queda un poquito aquí nomás, pero es lo que es, ¿no? Como seres humanos debemos de respetar toda la humanidad, no nomás a cristianos. Como antes, si no era cristiano, uno no era humano, ¿verdad? Por eso se decía, oh, pues es muy cristiano usted, bueno, porque como que es más un ser humano por ser de esa iglesia. Pues eso es puro, no sé ni qué decirle, es como no sé, muy equivocado para identificar a un ser humano. I've been saying, it's time to move towards equality. This program is focused on indigenous identity and indigenous human rights. Keep focusing on your program. Thank you. Mestizos en Marcha, September.
¿Qué onda, carnal? Dice mi gente, la raza está abajo y tú estás indiferente. Prefieres cerrar los ojos, no vi nada. Estabas ocupado por andar en la tomada. Te gusta tirar el cruising todo el día, buscando a las mujeres como si el mundo acabaría. Pero no sabías que tú podías continuar tu educación para superarte en la vida. Hermano joven, levanta tu frente y